Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications before we begin, because what you're about to hear isn't just a philosophical lecture, it's a mirror held up to your own moral instincts. Imagine yourself sitting quietly, when suddenly you are thrown into a situation where there is no escape from responsibility. A runaway trolley is speeding down a track at 60 miles an hour. Ahead, 5 workers are busy with their tools, unaware that death is seconds away. You try to stop the trolley, but the brakes have failed. Panic rises. Your heart races. You know with absolute certainty that if nothing changes, all 5 will die. Then you notice something else, a side track. On that track stands a single worker. Your steering wheel still functions. In this moment, you are forced to confront a question that feels brutally unfair. Should you turn the trolley, actively choosing to kill one person to save 5? There is no perfect outcome. Whatever you do, blood will be on your hands. This is not about heroism or villainy. It is about choice under pressure. It is about what justice means when time, comfort, and certainty are stripped away. And before you even realize it, your mind begins searching for reasons to live with yourself after the decision is made. When this question is posed to a room full of people, the response is strikingly consistent. The overwhelming majority say they would turn the trolley. Their reasoning sounds clear, logical, even compassionate. 5 lives matter more than one. Saving the greater number feels like the morally responsible choice. People often say, someone is going to die anyway, so it's better if fewer people die. This way of thinking is deeply intuitive. It aligns with how we make decisions during disasters, wars, and emergencies. We count losses. We try to reduce harm. We tell ourselves that numbers matter. Yet this logic also reveals something uncomfortable. By choosing to turn the trolley, you are no longer a passive observer of tragedy. You become an active participant. You are no longer merely witnessing death, you are directing it. Still, most people accept this burden, believing that responsibility is justified by outcome. They find comfort in the idea that the end result, 5 saved lives, redeems the action. But beneath that comfort lies a fragile assumption that moral value can be measured, calculated, and balanced like a ledger. This assumption will soon be tested, and when it is, many people discover that their confidence begins to crack. The confidence collapses when the scenario changes, even slightly. This time, you are not controlling the trolley. You are standing on a bridge, watching helplessly as it races toward 5 workers. Once again, the brakes don't work. Once again, death seems inevitable. But now, standing next to you, leaning over the bridge, is a large man. If you push him onto the track, his body will stop the trolley. The 5 workers will live. He will die. The numbers are identical. The outcome is identical. Yet suddenly, almost everyone refuses to act. Hands that were confidently raised before now stay firmly down. The room grows tense. People look uncomfortable. Some laugh nervously. Others look away. What changed? Why does turning a steering wheel feel acceptable, but pushing a man with your own hands feels monstrous? The math hasn't changed. 5 lives are still worth more than one, or are they? This moment exposes a fault line in human morality. It suggests that we care not only about results, but also about the nature of our actions. Using another human being as a physical tool feels like crossing a moral boundary, even if the consequences are better. And once that boundary is crossed in thought, it becomes difficult to unsee. People struggle to explain this difference, and their explanations often sound uncertain, even contradictory. Some say pushing the man feels like murder, while redirecting the trolley feels like allowing an accident to unfold differently. Others argue that the man on the bridge was not originally part of the danger, while the workers on the track already were. But when examined closely, these explanations begin to weaken. The lone worker on the side track did not consent to die any more than the man on the bridge did. Both are innocent. Both are used to save others. Still, our moral instincts resist equating the two acts. This resistance reveals that morality is not just a calculator of outcomes. It is also deeply tied to intention, agency, and physical involvement. Touching someone, pushing someone, directly causing their death with your own hands triggers a visceral reaction that abstract reasoning struggles to override. This discomfort suggests that there may be moral limits, lines we are unwilling to cross, even for good reasons. And once those limits are acknowledged, the idea that the ends justify the means begins to feel dangerously incomplete. The dilemma grows even sharper when moved into the medical world. Imagine you are an emergency room doctor. 6 patients arrive after a horrific accident. 5 have moderate injuries. 1 is critically injured and will require all of your time and resources. If you save the 1, the 5 will die. If you save the 5, the 1 will die. Most people immediately choose to save the 5. Here again, numbers guide judgment. But now consider a different medical scenario. You are a transplant surgeon. 5 patients are dying, each needing a different organ. In the next room is a healthy person who came in for a routine checkup. Killing him would provide the organs needed to save the 5. Almost no one agrees to do it. The outcome is the same as before: 5 live, 1 dies, yet the moral judgment is radically different. This contrast forces an uncomfortable realization. We are not purely utilitarian creatures. We do not judge morality solely by results. We are deeply influenced by whether harm is intended, direct, and personal. Killing an innocent person as a means to an end feels categorically wrong, even when it produces greater good. From these reactions, 2 powerful moral frameworks emerge. The first is consequentialism, the idea that the morality of an action depends entirely on its consequences. If an action leads to less suffering and more happiness overall, it is justified. This way of thinking feels practical, especially in policy, law, and crisis management. The second framework is categorical moral reasoning. This view insists that some actions are wrong in themselves, regardless of the outcomes they produce. Under this approach, people are not tools. They are ends in themselves. Their rights cannot be violated simply because doing so would help others. These 2 moral visions often clash, not just in philosophy classrooms, but in real life, in debates over war, healthcare, justice, and human rights. What makes these dilemmas so disturbing is that both frameworks feel compelling. We want to reduce suffering, but we also want to live in a world where certain lines are never crossed. Holding both desires at once creates tension, a tension that philosophy refuses to resolve easily. Philosophy's role is not to comfort us, but to unsettle us. It takes what feels obvious and forces us to question it. Once that process begins, innocence is lost. You can no longer say, "I just know what's right," without examining why. This is why studying moral philosophy carries risks. Personally, it can make you uncertain. Politically, it can make you skeptical of traditions and authority. History shows that philosophy often disrupts before it improves. Even Socrates was warned to stop philosophizing and focus on practical life. But philosophy persists because these questions are unavoidable. Every law, every policy, every social norm reflects an answer, whether acknowledged or not, to the question of what justice requires. Avoiding moral reasoning does not free us from moral responsibility. It only blinds us to the principles we are already living by. Some people retreat into skepticism, claiming that moral questions have no real answers, that everyone simply has their own opinion. But this retreat is itself a choice, and not a neutral one. As Kant observed, skepticism may offer rest, but it cannot be a permanent home. Reason remains restless. Moral questions return again and again, demanding engagement. Whether we like it or not, we live out answers to these questions every day through our actions and our silence. The true purpose of these trolley dilemmas is not to reach a final verdict, but to awaken that restlessness, to force us to confront the gap between what we believe and what we feel. In the end, moral philosophy is not about trolleys, bridges, or hypothetical surgeons. It is about who we are when no option is clean, no answer is painless, and responsibility cannot be avoided. As these moral dilemmas unfold, something subtle but powerful begins to happen in the mind. You start noticing that your judgments shift depending on context, even when the outcomes remain the same. This realization can be deeply unsettling. It suggests that morality is not governed by a single rule that can be applied mechanically in every situation. Instead, our moral reasoning seems to move back and forth, from gut reactions to abstract principles, and then back again. When we encounter a new scenario, we test our principles against it. If the result feels wrong, we revise the principle. If the principle feels right, we question our reaction. This constant adjustment reveals that moral thinking is not static. It is a living process. The trolley problems are powerful not because they provide answers, but because they expose contradictions we would rather ignore. They force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that our sense of justice is shaped not only by logic, but also by emotion, proximity, and personal involvement. And once you become aware of this, you can no longer pretend that moral certainty comes easily or without cost. This is where utilitarianism enters the conversation more formally. Jeremy Bentham, an 18th-century English philosopher, argued that human beings are governed by two forces, pleasure and pain. From this observation, he developed a moral theory that feels almost scientific in its clarity. According to Bentham, the right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness and minimizes suffering. Morality, in this view, becomes a kind of calculation. We weigh benefits against harms, pleasures against pains, and choose the option with the best net result. This approach has enormous appeal, especially in public policy. Governments must make decisions that affect millions. They cannot focus on individual feelings alone. They must consider outcomes. Utilitarianism promises fairness through impartiality. Everyone's happiness counts equally. No one is special. No one is excluded. Yet this very strength becomes its weakness. When taken to extremes, utilitarian reasoning can justify actions that feel deeply unjust to individuals. It can demand sacrifices that violate our sense of dignity. And this tension lies at the heart of the moral unease stirred by the trolley problems. Opposing this outcome-focused view is the moral philosophy of Immanuel Kant. Kant rejected the idea that morality could be reduced to calculations of happiness. For him, moral worth comes from acting out of duty, not from producing desirable consequences. Kant argued that human beings possess inherent worth simply by virtue of being rational agents. Because of this, they must never be treated merely as means to an end. This principle directly challenges utilitarian logic. From a Kantian perspective, pushing a man off a bridge or killing a healthy patient for organs is wrong, regardless of how many lives might be saved. These acts violate a fundamental moral law. They instrumentalize human life. Kant's philosophy resonates strongly with our instinctive resistance to certain actions, even when those actions promise good results. It explains why some lines feel uncrossable. Yet Kantian morality also faces criticism. In extreme situations, strict adherence to duty can seem rigid, even cruel. If refusing to act leads to greater suffering, can that really be moral? The clash between Kant and Bentham is not just theoretical. It reflects a deep conflict within our own moral psychology. This conflict becomes especially vivid when we consider real-life cases rather than thought experiments. History is filled with moments where leaders justified terrible actions by appealing to the greater good. Wars have been waged, populations displaced, innocents sacrificed, all in the name of future peace or national survival. Utilitarian logic often appears in these justifications. Yet history also teaches us the danger of unchecked consequence-based reasoning. When individuals are reduced to numbers, atrocities become easier to defend. At the same time, absolute moral rules can paralyze action in moments of crisis. If no rule can ever be broken, even to prevent catastrophe, moral reasoning risks becoming detached from human suffering. This is why moral philosophy does not offer easy comfort. It places us in a space of tension, where competing values pull in opposite directions. Justice demands both compassion and restraint. Wisdom lies not in choosing one framework blindly, but in recognizing the cost of each choice. Moral maturity begins when we stop searching for perfect answers and start acknowledging tragic trade-offs. One of the most unsettling lessons of these discussions is that moral responsibility cannot be escaped by inaction. Choosing not to turn the trolley, choosing not to push the man, choosing not to intervene, these are still choices. They shape outcomes. They carry consequences. We often comfort ourselves by believing that harm caused indirectly is less blameworthy than harm caused directly. But philosophy challenges this comfort. It asks whether distance truly absolves responsibility. If you could prevent deaths but refuse to act, are you morally innocent? This question strikes at the heart of modern life, where systems and institutions often separate actions from outcomes. Decisions made in offices, courts, and parliaments affect lives far away. The trolley problem reminds us that moral distance does not erase moral agency. Even silence can be a form of choice. And once this realization sets in, neutrality becomes harder to defend. This is why studying moral philosophy feels risky. It destabilizes familiar beliefs. It strips away comforting illusions. Socrates understood this danger well. In ancient Athens, he was accused of corrupting the youth, not because he gave them immoral ideas, but because he taught them to question what they thought they knew. His critics argued that philosophy weakened civic virtue by undermining tradition. There is some truth to this charge. Philosophy does not always make us better citizens immediately. It can make us doubtful, hesitant, even alienated. But this period of discomfort is often a necessary stage. Before beliefs can be strengthened, they must be examined. Before justice can be defended, it must be understood. Philosophy's value lies not in providing ready-made answers, but in sharpening judgment. It teaches us how to think, not what to think. In response to this discomfort, many people retreat into moral relativism. They claim that right and wrong are merely matters of opinion, shaped by culture or personal preference. While this view appears tolerant, it carries its own dangers. If all moral judgments are equally valid, then no action can truly be condemned. Injustice becomes just another perspective. Kant warned against this surrender of reason. He argued that skepticism may feel like rest after intellectual struggle. But it cannot be a permanent dwelling place. Human reason, he said, is restless by nature. It seeks justification. It demands coherence. Even those who claim to reject moral reasoning continue to live by unexamined principles. They make choices. They express outrage. They praise and blame. Moral life goes on, whether acknowledged or not. The question is not whether we will live by moral values, but whether we will understand the ones we are already living by. The true educational power of these dilemmas lies in their ability to awaken self-awareness. When you notice your own hesitation, your own contradictions, you begin to see morality not as a list of rules, but as a practice of reflection. You learn that ethical judgment requires humility, the willingness to revise beliefs in light of new insights. This process is slow. It is uncomfortable, but it is also deeply human. Moral growth does not come from memorizing theories. It comes from grappling with hard cases, from listening to opposing views, and from accepting that reasonable people can disagree profoundly. This is why moral philosophy remains relevant across centuries. The questions persist because they touch something essential in human life, the tension between individual dignity and collective welfare. As these discussions extend beyond classrooms, they shape how societies design laws and institutions. Debates over healthcare allocation, military conscription, free speech, and criminal punishment all reflect underlying moral theories. Should policies aim to maximize overall welfare, even if some individuals are harmed? Or should certain rights be protected absolutely, regardless of cost? There is no escaping these questions. Every legal system embodies answers to them. When citizens fail to engage philosophically, decisions are still made, just without reflection. Philosophy does not replace politics, but it clarifies what is at stake. It exposes hidden assumptions. It forces public debate to confront its moral foundations. When someone says, "In desperate situations, you do what you have to do," they are expressing a powerful instinct for survival. But philosophy presses further. It asks, at what cost? What does survival mean if it requires abandoning the values that make life worth living? Extreme scenarios test the limits of moral commitment. They reveal whether principles are merely conveniences or genuine convictions. The trolley problem dramatizes this test. It strips away excuses. It forces us to ask not only what we would do, but who we would become by doing it. And this question lingers long after the hypothetical ends. In the end, moral philosophy does not aim to eliminate disagreement. It aims to make disagreement more thoughtful. It teaches us to give reasons, to listen, and to recognize the complexity of human judgment. The goal is not certainty, but clarity. Not comfort, but understanding. When we engage seriously with these questions, we participate in a tradition that stretches back thousands of years, a tradition that treats moral reflection as essential to human freedom. To think morally is to take responsibility for one's actions, even when the answers are painful. So the story of the trolley is not really about tracks, bridges, or runaway machines. It is about you, about the choices you face when rules collide and outcomes conflict. It is about the uneasy space between compassion and principle, between saving lives and respecting dignity. Moral philosophy invites you into that space, not to judge you, but to challenge you. Once reason awakens, it does not let go easily. The familiar becomes strange. The easy answer disappears. But in its place emerges something deeper, a more honest engagement with what justice demands. And that restlessness of reason, once awakened, is not a burden. It is a responsibility.